My daughter got married, and I kept quiet about having inherited a fortune from her grandmother. Not out of fear, but out of pure intuition. Because I knew her husband's smile far too well. And I was not wrong. A few days later, they both showed up, with a lawyer, a black folder, and an ambition that you could practically breathe in the air. They thought they were coming to finalize paperwork. They had no idea who they were messing with. If this story touches your heart, subscribe to the channel. Every day, I share a true story that might resemble your own. Let me know in the comments where you are listening to us from. My name is Robert Alcantara Morbillo. I am 81 years old, but don't get it twisted. 81 years old does not mean I'm an idiot. I live alone in a condo in the Upper East Side, right here in New York City, and I've spent 50 years reading contracts, negotiating with banks, and burying people who underestimated me. When the doorbell rang that morning, 3 times in a row, I already knew who it was. I had been expecting them for a week. A week had passed since the wedding of my daughter, Chelsea, where she danced with that man, Mark, and I stayed in a corner, watching her laugh with a laugh I didn't recognize. A nervous, fake laugh. I walked slowly to the door, not because my legs hurt, but because I wanted them to wait. I wanted them to know that I control my house, my time, my life. I opened it, and there they were, all 3. Chelsea in a black dress that looked like a funeral outfit. Mark with his hands in his pockets and that used car salesman's smile. And a skinny guy in a cheap gray suit with a leather briefcase so worn I could smell the desperation from the doorway. "Good morning, Mr. Robert," Mark said. I didn't answer. I looked at them one by one, slowly, letting the silence turn uncomfortable. Chelsea wouldn't look me in the eye. That told me everything. Mark took a step forward and pushed the door open with an open hand, firmly, without waiting for me to say, "Come in." He walked in, just like that, as if it were his own house. I thought, oh, so that's how we're going to play. I let them pass, all 3 of them, and closed the door behind them with a sharp bang that made the skinny guy with the briefcase jump. Mark walked straight to my dining room table as if he knew it by heart. Maybe he did. Maybe Chelsea had told him where I keep the papers, where the safe that isn't really a safe is, where everything is. He stopped in front of the table, ran his fingers along the wooden edge, as if measuring, as if acknowledging conquered territory. The man in the gray suit introduced himself. "Jacob Tarrega, attorney at law," he said with a voice that tried to sound important, but only sounded rehearsed. He extended his hand. I shook it, cold, clammy, like touching a dead fish. His eyes darted away from mine when he squeezed my hand. "Coward." "Have a seat, Mr. Robert," Mark said, pointing to my own chair, as if he lived here, as if I were the guest. I remained standing, firm. "I prefer to stand," I said. Mark smiled. That smile. The same one he used at the wedding when he shook my hand and said, "I'll take good care of your daughter." The same one that made me clench my teeth and think, this son of a gun is lying to me. And now, seeing how he moved in my house, I knew I hadn't been wrong. Jacob opened the briefcase and pulled out a thick, black folder full of papers. He placed it on the table with a dull, theatrical thud, as if it were a bomb. "Mr. Robert," Mark said, still standing, still with that smile, "we need to talk about important things, things that affect the whole family." Family? That word sounded like an insult. I looked at Chelsea. She was sitting on the sofa, her hands on her knees, her wedding ring shining under the light coming in from the window. I'm sure she hadn't taken that ring off even to sleep. "What things?" I asked, though I already knew. I'd known since the day I first saw Mark 6 months ago, when he appeared out of nowhere in my daughter's life. And within 2 weeks, they were already talking about marriage. I kept quiet then, but I was watching. I was always watching. Mark pushed the folder toward me. "Open it," he said. I opened it, slowly. I went through the pages calmly, reading every line, every word. Deeds to my condo, bank statements, property titles for the land I inherited from my mother 2 months ago, documents that only I should have, documents that someone had copied, investigated, gathered. "Where did you get these?" I asked, without looking up. Silence. Then Jacob spoke. "They are public documents, Mr. Robert. Anyone can access them." A lie. Some of those papers are not public. Someone had been in my house. Someone had gone through my things. I looked up and faced Chelsea. She still wouldn't look at me. And right then, I knew. It was her. "What do you want?" I asked. Directly, without beating around the bush, without giving them the pleasure of continuing their game. Mark sat in the chair across from me, settling in as if he were in his office, crossing his legs, adjusting his shirt collar. Everything calculated, everything rehearsed. "We want to help you, Mr. Robert. You're at an age where managing so many properties, so many accounts, is complicated. You might make mistakes. You might forget things. We can take care of it." The way he said it, in that soft, condescending voice, as if he were speaking to a child. I laughed, a short, dry laugh, with no humor in it. "Mistakes?" I said. "I've been managing my own affairs for 60 years. 60 years negotiating with banks that tried to rip me off. 60 years paying my taxes to the penny. I've never had a problem. I've never forgotten anything. And now you're telling me I need help." Jacob leaned forward, with that look of fake concern they must teach in law school. "Mr. Robert, with all due respect, age is age. We all get there. It's normal. There's no shame in admitting you need support." I stared at him, directly in the eyes. "I have no shame about anything, but you two should." It was then that I heard footsteps in the hall, slow, cautious. Mrs. Kelly and Mr. Paul, my neighbors, my witnesses, always alert, always there when something smells fishy. They stopped at the doorway, watching. Mark noticed and turned, annoyed. "This is a private matter," he told them. Mrs. Kelly didn't move. "Robert is our friend," she said, "and this is his home. If he wants us to stay, we stay." I didn't say a word, but I didn't ask them to leave either. Mark clenched his jaw. Jacob closed his briefcase with a nervous click. And I thought, perfect. Let them see. Let them hear. Let them be witnesses to what these vultures are trying to pull. That's when I saw something in Mark's eyes. Something that chilled my blood. It wasn't just ambition. It wasn't just the look of a man who wants money. It was hate. Deep, visceral, personal hate. The kind of hatred that cooks for years. The kind of hatred that doesn't come from a disagreement or an argument. It was root hatred. The kind that comes from old, unhealed wounds. As if I had done something terrible to him, something unforgivable, as if he had known me from before. But I didn't know him. I had never seen him until 6 months ago, when he appeared out of nowhere in my daughter's life. Why did he hate me like that? It made no sense unless there was something I didn't know, something he did know, something buried in my past, something I had forgotten, or never even knew. And that thought made me feel something I hadn't felt in years. Curiosity. Dangerous, sharp, cold. the curiosity of a hunter who senses something hidden in the woods, something that needed to be uncovered. I wanted to know. No, I needed to know what was really going on, because a man doesn't look at another man like that for no reason. And I was going to find out what that reason was, even if it led me straight to hell. "Chelsea," I said, without taking my eyes off Mark, "you know what they're doing." She finally looked up. Her eyes were red, swollen. She had been crying. "Dad," she said, her voice breaking, "it's for the best. Believe me, it's for the best for everyone. For all of us." That phrase hurt me more than any insult, because it meant she believed, or wanted to believe, that what they were doing was right. That robbing me, humiliating me, declaring me incompetent was for my own good. Mark put a hand on her shoulder, a protective, possessive gesture. "Chelsea agrees, Mr. Robert. We both agree. It's a simple process, quick and painless." I smiled, a humorless smile. "Painless," I repeated. "Right." They left shortly after. All three of them. Mark calmly took the folder, as if he had all the time in the world. Jacob grabbed his briefcase, closing it with that metallic click that sounded like a threat. And Chelsea got up like a shadow, without saying another word, without looking at me, following them like a dog follows its master. I closed the door behind them. The sound echoed in the empty condo. I stood there with my hand still on the doorknob, feeling the silence return to fill my house. But it was a different silence, heavier, denser, as if they had left something in the air, something dirty, something threatening. Mrs. Kelly and Mr. Paul walked in slowly. "Robert," she said, her voice trembling, "what was that? What are they trying to do?" I didn't answer right away. I stood staring at the table, the papers they had left, the black folder, the fingerprints of their greed on my life. And then, for the first time in a long time, I felt something I had forgotten. The thrill of battle, the tingling in my veins, the adrenaline, the certainty that this was not over, because that's what this was, a battle. And they thought they had already won it. They thought I was an old man, easy to scare, easy to manipulate, easy to destroy. They had no idea who they were messing with. But they were about to find out, one by one. They came back the next day, this time without ringing the bell. I heard the key in the lock while I was in the kitchen making coffee. My key, the one I gave Chelsea years ago, when her mother died and she was afraid something might happen to me and no one could get in to help. The door opened. They walked in, all three of them, as if they owned the place. I left the coffee on the stove and walked to the living room. Mark was already sitting down. Jacob was pulling out papers. Chelsea was standing by the window, looking out at the street. "Good morning," I said. Mark smiled. "Good morning, Mr. Robert. We thought it would be better to start early." I poured my coffee slowly, very slowly. I took a sip. "I don't recall inviting you," I said. Mark shrugged. "We're family. We don't need an invitation." Mark opened the folder again and began to read aloud. But this time he did it differently. He did it as if I were simple-minded, as if I didn't understand. "It says here," he began, marking each word with his finger, slowly, exaggeratedly, slowly, "that Robert Alcantara Morbillo transfers the property located on Park Avenue number 234 to the name of his daughter, Chelsea Alcantara Abrel." He paused. He looked at me. "Do you understand what it says here, Mr. Robert?" I took another sip of coffee. "I understand perfectly," I said. "What I don't understand is why you think I'm going to sign that." Mark smiled again. That smile that made me want to punch him in the mouth. Because it's the right thing to do, Mr. Robert. Because it's what's best for you. Jacob pulled out a small notepad and a pen. Mr. Robert, he said, raising his voice as if I were deaf. Do you know what day it is today? I looked at him without blinking. Wednesday, October 24th. Jacob wrote something down. And do you know how old you are? 81. I turn 82 in January. More notes. Do you remember what you had for dinner last night? I laughed, a short laugh. Chicken pot pie. I made it myself, with a recipe my mother taught me when I was 20 years old. Do you want me to tell you the ingredients? Jacob didn't answer. He kept writing, and I knew exactly what he was doing. He was building a profile, looking for any hesitation, any doubt, any mistake to use against me. Chelsea turned from the window. Her eyes avoided mine again. Dad, she said, and her voice sounded tired, defeated, as if she had lost an internal war before even arriving here. It really is for your own good. You can't take care of all of this alone anymore. It's too much. Too much responsibility. We just want to help you. I looked at her. I really looked at her. My daughter, the girl I raised alone after her mother died. The girl who cried in my arms during thunderstorms. The girl who used to tell me, "You're the strongest man in the world, Daddy." Where had that girl gone? What had that man done to her to turn her into this? Help me, I said, and my voice came out harder than I intended. Help me by robbing me? Help me by declaring me incompetent? Help me by taking away everything I worked for 60 years for? She looked down. Tears ran down her cheeks. But she didn't defend me. She didn't say, "No, Dad, you're wrong." She just cried. And that hurt more than any insult. "It's not robbing, Dad," she whispered. "It's protecting what's ours." What's ours? Not what is mine. Ours? As if I were already dead. As if my life no longer counted. As if I were just an obstacle between them and my mother's money. I tried to speak. I paid all the taxes this year. I have all the receipts. My accounts are in order. There are no... Mark cut me off. He raised his hand, the way you would to a child. Mr. Robert, with all due respect, there are irregularities, duplicate payments, repeated calls to the bank, forgetfulness. I clenched my fists. What duplicate payments? Mark pulled out a paper. Right here, the August electric bill, paid twice. I remembered that. I paid the first time at the bank, but the system didn't register it. I got another notification. I paid again to avoid being disconnected. Then they sent the money back. Everything was resolved. But Mark was using it. He was twisting it to make me look like a confused old man. The room felt smaller and smaller, more suffocating, as if the walls were closing in. We were 4 people, but I felt surrounded. Cornered. I thought, just for a second, about when Chelsea was 10 years old. She broke her arm playing at school. I dropped everything. I raced to the hospital. I stayed with her all night. "Don't leave me, Daddy," she said, holding my hand with her good hand. "Never," I promised her. And now, she was here, leaving me, allowing these 2 vultures to tear me apart. And she said nothing. She did nothing. She just looked at the floor. Mark kept attacking. We also detected that Mr. Robert has been missing doctor's appointments. I looked at him. What appointments? Jacob checked his notepad. Last week. Checkup with the cardiologist. He didn't show up. I laughed again. I canceled that appointment with 2 days' notice. I called the office because I had to go to the bank to sign some papers. They gave me another date. Mark smiled. "Do you have the proof of that call?" I didn't have it. Who keeps proof of phone calls? But I realized what he was doing. He didn't care about the truth. He cared about building a case that looked solid, a case that would convince a judge that I could no longer take care of myself. Jacob closed his notepad with a sharp snap. "Mr. Robert," he said, with that lawyerly voice I've learned to hate in my life, "what we are trying to do here is spare you a court process. If you sign voluntarily, everything stays between us. Private, discreet. Nobody has to know anything. But if you force us to go the legal route, believe me, it will be public. Your neighbors will know. Your friends will know. It's going to be humiliating, and in the end, the result will be exactly the same." That was a threat. Direct, clear. Sign or we destroy you. Sign or we expose you. Sign or we strip you of your dignity. Someone knocked at the door. 3 loud knocks. Mrs. Kelly walked in without waiting for an answer. She was carrying a tray with coffee and some butter cookies that she bakes herself. "Good morning," she said with that cheerful voice she uses when she knows something is wrong. "I brought you coffee." Mark immediately stood up. "It's not necessary, ma'am. We're in the middle of a private meeting." Mrs. Kelly ignored him completely. She put the tray on the table, right on top of Jacob's papers. "I always bring Robert coffee at this time, every day, for 20 years. And today is not going to be any different." Mark clenched his jaw. Jacob gathered his papers, annoyed, like a child whose toy has been taken away. Mrs. Kelly looked me in the eye. "Are you all right, Robert?" I nodded. "I'm fine, Kelly. Thank you." She looked at Mark, then at Jacob, then at Chelsea. And in her gaze there was something that made me feel less alone. There was understanding. There was support. There was fury. "If you need anything," she said to me, "I'll be right next door. Anything." And she left. Slowly, leaving the door ajar, so she could listen, so she could be a witness. Mark watched her leave with an expression of pure hatred. And I thought, good. Let it annoy you. Let you know that I'm not alone. That there are people who care about me. People who won't let you do this to me without a fight. After Mrs. Kelly left, the silence was dense, heavy, almost tangible, like you could cut it with a knife. Mark looked at me with those eyes full of hatred. A hatred he no longer tried to hide. Jacob checked his watch, nervous, restless, as if he had something better to do but didn't dare leave without Mark's order. And Chelsea. Chelsea was still there, standing by the window, her arms crossed, looking out at the street, saying nothing, doing nothing, allowing everything, as if it weren't her father who was being attacked, as if I were a stranger. I took a sip of coffee, cold now, bitter, like everything that morning. And I thought about what my mother told me before she died. It was in the hospital, 3 days before she closed her eyes for the last time. "Robert," she told me, grabbing my hand with a strength that didn't seem possible in someone so frail. "Never trust someone who smiles too much. Those people are hiding something. And never underestimate someone who hates you for no apparent reason. Because that reason exists. It always exists. You just don't know it yet." I didn't understand then. I thought they were the delusions of a dying woman. But now I understood. Mark hated me. With a hatred that went beyond ambition or greed. And I needed to find out why. But I didn't say anything. Not yet. I let them believe they had me cornered. I let them believe they were winning. Because a good hunter knows when to attack. And that moment hadn't arrived yet. They left around noon, all 3 of them. Mark with his shark smile, Jacob with his briefcase full of lies, and Chelsea. Chelsea without looking at me. I stayed sitting in the living room, staring at the closed door, listening to their footsteps fade down the hall. I waited for 10 minutes, 15. Then I went out into the corridor. Chelsea was there, alone, sitting on the building stairs, her head in her hands. Mark and Jacob had already left. "Chelsea," I said. She looked up, startled. Her eyes were red, her face stained with tears. "Dad," she said, and her voice sounded broken. "We need to talk," I said. "You and me, alone." She looked out at the street as if searching for Mark. "I can't," she said. "He's coming back in half an hour." He's coming back. As if she needed permission to talk to her own father. I sat down next to her on the stairs. Slowly. My knees creaked. She moved away slightly, instinctively, as if I was going to hurt her. That hurt me more than anything Mark had said. "Chelsea," I said, "look at me." She didn't. She kept staring at the ground, her hands trembling in her lap. "What made you believe that I abandoned you? What made you think that I didn't give you anything?" She took a shaky, deep breath. "Dad, you never gave me anything easy. Never." Those words hit me like a punch. "Easy?" I repeated. "What does that mean?" She turned then, and in her eyes there was something I hadn't seen before. Resentment. Old, deep. "It means I always had to ask you for everything. That you never offered me anything on your own. That I was always the one who had to beg." I fell silent, processing, trying to understand. "Chelsea," I said slowly, "your mother died when you were 7. I raised you alone. I worked double shifts at the factory so you could go to a private school. I paid for your college. I bought you your first car. Doesn't that count?" She wiped her tears with the back of her hand. "Yes, Dad. But always with that look of sacrifice, as if everything you gave me was a burden to you, as if I was a burden." That broke me, because maybe she was right. Maybe I had been so hard on myself, so demanding that all she saw was the exhaustion. Not the love, not the effort, just the exhaustion. I tried to touch her hand. She pulled it away. "Mark made me see," she said, and her voice trembled, "that you always controlled me, that you never let me make my own decisions, that you always wanted me to do what you wanted." I felt the anger rising in my throat. Mark. Of course. Mark had put those ideas in her head. Mark had convinced her that I was the villain. "Chelsea," I said, trying to keep calm, "I raised you to be strong so you wouldn't depend on anyone, so you wouldn't let people use you. And now, that man..." She stood up abruptly. "That man is my husband," she said, her voice loud, defensive. "And he loves me. He really loves me. Not like you, who only loved me when I did what you wanted." The building door opened. Mark appeared, as if he had been waiting for the exact moment to interrupt. "Chelsea," he said with that soft, controlled voice, "I was looking for you." She ran to him, literally ran, like a frightened child seeking protection. Mark hugged her. He looked at me over her shoulder and smiled. A triumphant, victorious smile, as if to say, "She's mine. She's not yours anymore." I got up slowly, feeling every muscle in my body protest. "Mark," I said, "can we talk for a moment?" He shook his head. "Not now, Mr. Robert. Chelsea is tired. She needs to rest." And he led her away. Just like that. And she let herself be led, without looking back. I returned to my condo. I closed the door, sat on the sofa, and, for the first time in years, felt something close to despair. Because I had lost my daughter. Not to death, not to distance, but to the words of a man who had convinced her that I was her enemy. But I didn't have much time to feel sorry for myself. Because the next day, they came back. All 3 of them. And this time, Mark brought something new. Something that chilled my blood. He sat across from me, opened the folder, and pulled out a paper. "Mr. Robert," he said, "let's talk about your grandmother Gloria's inheritance, the one you hid." The world stopped. I stared at him without blinking. "What inheritance?" I said, though my voice sounded fake even to me. Mark smiled. "The inheritance you received 2 months ago. The properties, the bank accounts, the land on the outskirts of the city." I didn't say anything. I couldn't say anything, because he was right. My mother had died 2 months ago, and she had left me everything she had saved for years. But I hadn't told anyone, not even Chelsea, because something, an instinct, a voice in my head, told me to wait, to keep quiet, to observe. And now I understood why. Because Mark knew. But how? I looked at Chelsea. She also seemed surprised. "Dad," she said, confused. "Is that true? Did Grandma leave you an inheritance?" I didn't answer. I kept looking at Mark. "How do you know?" I asked. Mark leaned back in his chair, crossed his legs, completely relaxed. "I know a lot of things, Mr. Robert. I know your mother owned 3 properties downtown. I know she had accounts in 2 different banks. I know she left important documents in a metal box you keep in your bedroom." That last part hit me like a bolt of lightning. Nobody knew about that box. Nobody. Only me and my mother. That meant someone had been in my house, had gone through my things, had spied. Jacob opened another folder. This one was thicker, full of papers. He spread them on the table like a deck of cards. Bank documents, property titles, account statements, all with my name on them. All real, all private. "Where did you get these?" I asked. And this time my voice came out hard, sharp. Jacob smiled. "Reliable sources," he said. I stood up abruptly. The chair fell backward with a crash. "You broke into my house. You went through my things without permission." Mark didn't flinch. "No, Mr. Robert. We didn't break into your house. We just investigated, as any responsible family would do before making important decisions." A lie. Someone had been in. Someone had stolen those documents. And I had an idea who. I looked at Chelsea. Her eyes were fixed on the papers, her mouth slightly open, processing. "Chelsea," I said, "did you give Mark the key to my house?" Silence. A terrible silence. Heavy. She didn't answer. She didn't look at me. But she didn't deny it either. Mark spoke for her. "Chelsea just wants to protect you, Mr. Robert. She wants to make sure you're well taken care of. That's why she gave us access. To verify that everything was in order." Access. As if I were a property that needed to be inspected. As if my life, my house, my belongings were inventory they had the right to check. "We know everything, Mr. Robert," Mark said, leaning forward. "Everything. And now you have 2 options. Cooperate, or this gets ugly." I stood there staring at him, and in that moment, I understood something fundamental. This wasn't improvised. This hadn't started a week ago. This had started months ago. Maybe since the day Mark met Chelsea, maybe even before. He had investigated. He had planned. He had waited for the exact moment. The wedding was just the closing of the deal. And I, idiot that I was, had been blind, believing he was just an opportunist. But no, he was much worse. He was someone with a plan, someone with information, someone who had been studying me like a predator studies its prey. And now he was ready to strike. But what Mark didn't know was that I had been preparing too. Quietly, silently, waiting. Mark pulled out his phone. He dialed a number. "You can come up now, doctor," he said. I looked at him, confused. "What, doctor?" Mark smiled, that crappy smile I was already sick of. "Mr. Robert, we brought someone who wants to meet you. Someone who's going to help us resolve this situation in the best way." I heard footsteps in the hall. Slow, heavy footsteps. The door opened. A man about 50 years old walked in. Dark blue suit, black leather briefcase, thick glasses. "Dr. Franklin Lacalle," he introduced himself, extending his hand. "Psychiatrist." I didn't shake his hand. I looked him up and down. "I didn't ask for a psychiatrist." The doctor smiled condescendingly. "You don't have to ask, Mr. Alcantara. Your family asked for you." Jacob pulled a folded paper from his jacket pocket. He unfolded it carefully, almost ceremoniously. "Mr. Robert," he said, "we have a preliminary court order. The judge authorized a home psychiatric evaluation due to concerns expressed by your daughter." I felt the anger surge, but I contained it. I swallowed it. "A court order?" I said slowly, articulating every word. "Based on what?" Jacob pointed to the papers on the table. "Based on testimonies from neighbors, medical personnel, and close relatives indicating progressive cognitive decline." I looked at Chelsea. Her eyes were fixed on the floor. "Did you sign this?" She nodded. Barely a movement of her head, but she did it. And that was like a knife in the chest. Dr. Franklin sat across from me, pulled out a notepad and a pen, and crossed his legs as if we were in his private office. "Mr. Alcantara," he began, with that soft voice people use when they think you're an idiot, "I'm going to ask you a few simple questions, just to assess your current state." I stared at him. "Go ahead." He smiled. "What day is today?" "Thursday, October 25th, 2024. He wrote it down. "Where are we?" "In my condo, Upper East Side, number 312, 3rd floor, apartment B, New York City." More notes. "Who is the President of the United States?" I answered, without hesitation, without pause. He continued with more questions, all designed to detect dementia, confusion, memory loss. I answered each one with surgical precision, without errors. The doctor changed tactics. "Mr. Alcantara, can you tell me what you had for dinner last night?" "Chicken noodle soup with a grilled cheese sandwich. I had a glass of Cabernet Sauvignon, vintage 2020. The doctor frowned. "And 3 days ago?" "Meatloaf, I made it myself. With mashed potatoes and green beans. I had it with a Cobb salad." Silence. The doctor looked at Mark. Mark was staring at the floor, his jaw tight. I continued. "If you want, I can tell you what I ate a week ago, or a month ago, or a year ago. I have a good memory, doctor, always have, and I still do." The doctor closed his notepad. "That's not enough to rule out cognitive decline. There are other indicators." Jacob intervened. "Mr. Robert, the doctor is here to help you." I laughed, a dry laugh. "Help me by bringing in a bought and paid-for psychiatrist to declare me mentally unfit?" Jacob took offense, or pretended to. "He is not a bought and paid-for psychiatrist, Mr. Robert. He is a professional with 30 years of experience." I looked him straight in the eyes. Section 224 of the Civil Code. Incompetence proceeding. It requires a formal petition to the court, a hearing with the alleged incapacitated person, reports from 2 independent medical specialists appointed by the judge, not by the family. Do you want me to continue? Silence. Jacob went pale. Mark stopped smiling. You think I don't know the law? I've been reading contracts for 60 years. I've buried better lawyers than you. Mark jumped up abruptly. Stop it! His voice came out loud, furious. For the first time since he arrived, he lost his composure. Stop playing games, old man. You're going to sign those papers right now. Chelsea flinched. Mark, please. He cut her off. He grabbed her arm, hard, too hard. I saw her wince in pain. Shut up, Mark told her, without looking at her. And I saw something in my daughter's eyes that chilled my blood. Fear. She was afraid of him. How long had it been like this? How many times had he grabbed her that way? How many times had he silenced her? I stood up slowly. Let go of my daughter. Mark released her, but not because I asked him to, but because he realized he had revealed something. I think we need a break, Dr. Franklin said, nervous, packing his things. This is getting out of hand. I looked at him. You're not going anywhere, doctor. Stay, because this is about to get interesting. I walked toward my bedroom. Mark and Jacob exchanged glances. He's going to get the documents, Mark said, smiling again. He's going to cooperate. I heard that from the hallway, and I smiled. Idiots. I opened the closet. I pulled out a shoebox. I returned to the living room. Here are the documents you need to see, I said, putting the box on the table. Mark leaned in, anxious. Jacob, too. Chelsea didn't move. I opened the box. And there they were, but they weren't property documents. They were photographs. Printed photos. In color. High resolution. Mark looked at them, and all the blood drained from his face. They were photos of him, entering my building on a Tuesday afternoon 3 weeks ago, when I was at the doctor's. Mark with a key in his hand. Mark opening my door. Mark inside my condo, going through drawers, photographing documents, emptying my mail. Breaking and entering, I said slowly. Section 202 of the Penal Code. 6 months to 2 years in prison. I put another photo on the table. Mark talking with Steve Jones, the deli owner, handing him an envelope. Witness tampering. Section 423, up to 4 years. More photos. Mark with Linda, with Julian, all of them receiving money. Where did you get these pictures? Mark asked, his voice trembling. I smiled. For the first time in days, I smiled for real. Hidden cameras, 3 of them, one in the hallway, one in my living room, one in my bedroom, installed 2 months ago when my mother warned me before she died to be careful with new people in my life. A lie. My mother hadn't warned me about anything. But I had suspected Mark from the beginning, and I decided to protect myself. I have everything recorded, Mark. Everything. Every time you walked in, every conversation, every bribe. I pulled a flash drive from my pocket, and I have copies, in 3 different locations, with instructions to send them to the police if anything happens to me. Jacob slammed his briefcase shut. This is a serious accusation, Mr. Robert. I hope you have real proof. I connected the flash drive to my laptop. I opened it. I played a video. The image was clear. Mark in my living room, going through papers, photographing them with his cell phone. The audio was clean. Here's everything we need, Mark's voice said in the video. With this, we can declare him incompetent in 2 weeks. Jacob's voice answered from the speakerphone. Perfect. Build the profile. I'll take care of the judge. I paused the video. I looked at Jacob. Enough proof, counselor? Jacob stood up. I didn't know that. Shut up, I said. My voice came out cold, hard. And get out of my house, now. Dr. Franklin had already left. Jacob rushed out after him, practically running. 3 of us remained. Me, Mark, and Chelsea. She was sitting on the sofa, trembling, her hands over her face. Mark was still standing, looking at the photos on the table. How long have you been planning this? I asked. Mark didn't answer. Months? Maybe years, right? Silence. It's not just about the money. I saw you. I saw how you look at me. With hate. Real, personal hate. I looked in the document folder I had brought from my room. Among the investigator's papers, there was an old photo he had found in the orphanage archives. I pulled it out. It was blurry. A young woman, about 20 years old, smiling at the camera. On the back it said, Alice Baruti, 1963. Who is Alice Baruti, Mark? He looked up, slowly. And in his eyes, I saw something I hadn't seen before. It wasn't just hate. It was pain. Old, deep pain. How do you know that name? He whispered. Mark continued to stare at the photos on the table. The photos of him entering my house. The photos of him bribing witnesses. All the color had drained from his face. He was no longer the confident man who had walked into my condo with a shark smile. He was a man cornered. This doesn't prove anything, he said, but his voice trembled. I laughed. A short, dry laugh. It doesn't prove anything? Mark, I have recordings of you inside my house, going through my drawers, photographing private documents. I have videos of you paying Steve, paying Linda, paying Julian. Everything is recorded. Everything has a date. Everything has a timestamp. Jacob tried to intervene. Mr. Robert, this can be explained. I cut him off. Shut up, counselor. I've heard enough of your lies. I connected the flash drive to my laptop. I played another video. This one was different. It was an audio recording. Clear, clean. Mark's voice speaking on the phone. Jacob, I need you to prepare the papers. Declaration of incompetence, transfer of assets, everything. We have 2 weeks to do it before the old man suspects anything. Jacob's voice replied. Are you sure it's going to work? Mark. He's 81 years old. No one's going to doubt you. I already have witnesses. I already have a doctor. I just need you to handle the legal part. I paused the recording. I looked at Jacob. Do you still want to say you didn't know anything? Jacob closed his briefcase. He stood up. I have nothing further to discuss. And he left. Quickly. Like a rat abandoning a sinking ship. Mark remained standing, breathing heavily, his hands clenched into fists. I did what I had to do, he said. His voice came out low. Dangerous. Had to do? Rob me? Declare me mentally unfit? He looked me straight in the eyes. You hid the inheritance. You kept quiet about what your mother left you. And I'm the bad guy? I didn't deny it. Yes, I kept quiet. Because something about you didn't sit right with me from the beginning. And I was right. Mark took a step toward me. Do you know what it's like to have nothing? Do you know what it's like to see people like you have properties, bank accounts, everything, while others have to fight for scraps? There it was. The crack. The anger that wasn't just about money. It was something deeper, more personal. People like me, I repeated. What does that mean, Mark? He laughed, a bitter laugh. It means you were born with a family name, with advantages, and I didn't have any of that. I stood up, slowly, firmly. I worked 60 years for what I have. My mother was tough, strict. She didn't give me anything easy. Mark shook his head. Lies. You all say the same thing, but you were born with advantages I never had. Chelsea, who had been silent all this time, finally spoke. Mark, what are you talking about? What does my dad have to do with you? Mark turned to her, and in his eyes there was something I hadn't seen before. Pain. Old, buried pain. Everything, he said. Your father has something to do with everything. I walked toward him. Explain yourself. Mark clenched his jaw. Why? So you can tell me I'm crazy? So you can tell me I'm making things up? I shook my head. No, so I can understand why you hate me so much. Because this isn't just about money. I saw you. I saw how you look at me. With real, personal hate. Mark was quiet, breathing hard. Then he said something that made me feel a chill in my stomach. Because people like you always had everything easy. You never had to wonder why you weren't good enough. Why you weren't wanted. Why you had to grow up alone. Those words fell like stones. Because I understood. This had to do with abandonment. With rejection. With something that happened a long time ago. Mark, I said, trying to keep my voice calm. I don't know what happened to you, but I had nothing to do with it. Mark looked at me with contempt. Didn't you? Are you sure? I didn't answer, because I wasn't sure. Because there was something in his tone that made me doubt. What do you mean? I asked. Mark opened his mouth, closed it, as if he were fighting with himself, as if he wanted to say something but didn't dare. Chelsea got up from the sofa. Mark, if there's something you need to say it now. He looked at her, and for a moment, I saw something close to guilt on his face. I can't, he said. Not yet. And he walked toward the door. You're not leaving until you tell me what's going on, I said. Mark stopped, his hand on the doorknob. You want to know what's going on? Ask your mother. Ask Mrs. Gloria what she did 60 years ago. I froze. My mother is dead. Mark turned around. I know. Convenient, isn't it? That she died before she could answer for what she did. I walked toward him. What did my mother do? Mark looked at me with eyes full of rage. She destroyed lives. That's what she did. And you benefited from it without even knowing. Those words hit me like a punch. Because my mother had been tough, she had been strict. But destroy lives? What was he talking about? Mark, if you know something, tell me now. He shook his head. No. First, I'm going to make sure it's true. And when I do, you're going to have to face what your family did. He opened the door. Chelsea took a step toward him. Mark, don't leave like this. He looked at her, and in his gaze there was something that made me feel fear. Not for me, for her. Chelsea, if you know what's good for you, you stay with your father, for now. And he left. The door closed with a sharp bang, and for the first time in this war, Chelsea didn't follow him. She stood there, in the middle of my living room, staring at the closed door. Dad, she said, her voice trembling, what did Grandma do? I didn't answer right away, because I didn't know. My mother had been many things, tough, controlling, obsessed with our family name, with status, with reputation. But destroy? What had she done? I sat on the sofa, slowly, feeling the weight of 81 years crash down on me all at once. Chelsea sat beside me. Dad, are you all right? I shook my head. I don't know, honey. I don't know. We remained in silence, a heavy silence, full of unanswered questions, full of fear for what was to come. Because something told me that what Mark had hinted at was only the beginning. That the truth, when it came out, would be worse than I imagined. Mrs. Kelly appeared at the door. She hadn't knocked. She just walked in, as she always did when she knew something was wrong. Robert, I saw the young man leave. Are you okay? I nodded. I'm fine, Kelly. Thank you. She looked at the photos on the table, the papers, the mess of the battle that had just ended. Do you need anything? I shook my head. I just need to think. She nodded. She left slowly, and Chelsea and I stayed there, the two of us, in silence, processing, trying to understand what had just happened, and why, after all this, I had the feeling that the worst was yet to come. I didn't sleep that night. I stayed sitting in the living room, looking at the photos, the evidence against Mark, and thinking about what he had said. Ask your mother what she did 60 years ago. What had she done? What secret had she kept? What lie had I been living without knowing? I looked at the clock. It was 3 in the morning. Chelsea was sleeping in my bedroom. I could hear her steady breathing from the living room. For the first time in days, she was at peace. But I wasn't. I was more restless than ever, because I knew that tomorrow I would have to start looking for answers. I would have to unearth the past. I would have to face truths that maybe I would rather not know. But I had no choice. Mark had opened a door, and now I had to cross it, even if hell was on the other side. I woke up with the sun streaming through the window. I had fallen asleep on the sofa. My neck hurt. My back too. I heard noises in the kitchen. Chelsea was there making coffee. When she saw me, she smiled. A sad smile, but a smile nonetheless. "Good morning, Dad." I got up slowly. "Good morning, honey." We sat at the table. She put out 2 cups of coffee. Toast, butter. Like when she was a little girl and we had breakfast together on Sundays. "Did you sleep well?" I asked. She shook her head. "Not much, but better than at home." Home? She still called the condo she shared with Mark home. "Chelsea," I said, "you don't have to go back there." She looked at me. "I know." We stayed silent for a while, drinking coffee, listening to the sounds of the morning, the traffic outside, the birds, life continuing as if nothing had happened. But everything had happened. Everything had changed. "Dad," Chelsea finally said, "I need to tell you something." I put my cup on the table. "Tell me." She took a deep breath. Mark isn't what you think." I waited. "He never hit me," she continued. "He never raised his hand to me, but—" She fell silent. I saw her eyes fill with tears. "But he controlled me all the time." And then she began to tell me. And with every word I felt the rage grow inside me. She told me how Mark checked her phone every night, how he asked her who she had talked to, what she had said, why she had taken so long to answer. She told me how he isolated her from her friends, how he told her I was a bad father, that I had never loved her, that only he understood her. "He convinced me I was crazy," Chelsea said, wiping away her tears. "He convinced me that without him I was nothing, that no one else would ever love me." I wanted to get up. I wanted to go find Mark but no, I couldn't do that. Not like this. "Why didn't you tell me anything?" I asked. Chelsea looked at me. "Because I believed him. I believed him when he told me you were the problem." I took her hand. "I'm sorry, honey. I'm sorry I didn't realize." She shook her head. "It's not your fault, Dad. He's very good at what he does. He's so good that even I didn't realize until yesterday, until I saw the photos, the evidence, and understood that it was all a lie." We stayed like that for a while, in silence, processing. "Are you afraid of him?" I asked. Chelsea nodded. "Yes. I'm afraid of what he might do, of what he might say." I squeezed her hand. "I won't let him hurt you. I promise you." She smiled sadly. "How are you going to protect me? He has something against you, something to do with Grandma." I nodded. "I know. And I'm going to find out what it is." I got up and went to my bedroom. I took out a folder I had stored away. The folder with the documents the investigator had given me 3 months ago. When I decided to look into Mark, I returned to the living room. I put the folder on the table. "What's that?" Chelsea asked. "Information about Mark," I said. "I got it months ago, when something told me he wasn't who he claimed to be." I opened the folder. Inside were documents, certificates, photos. One photo in particular caught my attention when the investigator brought it to me. A young woman, smiling. The investigator had found it in the orphanage archives. Alice Baruti, Mark's biological mother, it said on the back. "His full name is not Mark Baruti Smith," I said. "It's just Mark Baruti." Chelsea looked at me, confused. "What?" I pulled out a paper. A birth certificate. "Smith is not his birth name. It's the name of the family who adopted him." Chelsea took the paper. She read it. "Mark Baruti, born on March 12, 1964. Mother, Alice Baruti. Father, unknown." She looked at me. "He was adopted?" I nodded. "At 12 years old? By a family named Smith. But he never legally took the name. He just used it." Chelsea frowned. "Why would he lie about that?" I shook my head. "I don't know. But there's more." I pulled out another document. "He spent the first 12 years of his life in an orphanage, St. Jude's, right here in New York City." Chelsea went pale. "An orphanage? But he told me he grew up with his mother." I nodded. He lied. His mother left him there when he was 12 years old and disappeared. "Disappeared?" Chelsea asked. "Where to?" I pulled out more papers. "Nobody knows. Alice Baruti left Mark at the orphanage in July of 1976. And she never came back. Never visited him. She just left." Chelsea covered her mouth with her hands. "Oh my God." I continued. 2 months later, the Smith family adopted him. A wealthy family went with a good name. They gave him an education, college, everything. But Mark was never happy. The investigators spoke with people who knew him. They say he was always distant, resentful, as if he was carrying something heavy. Chelsea looked at me. "And his mother?" "Nobody knows what happened to her. She disappeared, as if the earth had swallowed her whole." Chelsea stared at the papers. Why did he lie to me about all of this? Why invent a life he didn't have? I sat beside her. "I don't know, honey. But I'm going to find out. I'm going to find Alice Baruti, and I'm going to discover what happened 60 years ago." Chelsea looked at me with fear in her eyes. "Dad, what if what Mark said is true? What if Grandma did something terrible?" I took a deep breath. "Then I will face it, and I will do what I have to do to fix it." Chelsea nodded. "I can stay here. I don't want to go back to that condo." I took her hand. "Stay as long as you need. This is your home. Always has been." That afternoon, Chelsea went to her condo to get clothes. I told her to go with Mrs. Kelly, not to go alone. She agreed. While they were out, I called a number I had saved. A private investigator, the best one, Mr. Alexander Paz. I had worked with him years ago on a complicated case. If anyone could find Alice Baruti, it was him. "Mr. Alexander," I said when he answered. "It's Robert Alcantara. I need your help." We agreed to meet the next day. I briefly explained what I needed. He didn't ask questions. He just said, "I'll be there tomorrow at 9, and hung up. I liked that about him. He didn't waste time. Chelsea returned 2 hours later. She was carrying a suitcase, and an expression that made me fear the worst. "What happened?" I asked. She dropped the suitcase on the floor. Mark was there. I stood up abruptly. "Did he do anything to you?" She shook her head. "No, but he said things to me." She sat on the sofa. "He told me this wasn't over. that you were going to pay for what you did, that the truth was going to come out, and when it did, I was going to have to choose whose side I was on. I felt fear creep up my spine. Did he say anything else? Chelsea nodded. He said he was looking for someone. Someone who was going to change everything. Someone who was going to prove he was right. That night, at 11 o'clock, my phone rang. Unknown number. I answered. Yes? It was Mark. His voice sounded different, less controlled, more desperate. Robert, he said. It wasn't Mr. Robert anymore. Just Robert. I know you're investigating. I know you're looking for Alice. I didn't answer. But you won't find what you're looking for, he continued, because I already found her. And when I bring the evidence, you're going to have to accept the truth. You're going to have to accept what your family did. What you did. I gripped the phone. I didn't do anything. Mark laughed, a bitter laugh. That's what everyone says, until the truth catches up to them. And he hung up. I stood there, phone in hand, feeling the net close in. Feeling the past, that past I didn't know, about to explode in my face. And there was no way to stop it. Mr. Alexander Paz arrived at 9 in the morning on the dot. He was a man in his 60s, impeccable gray suit, neatly trimmed mustache, hawk eyes that missed nothing. I had met him 15 years ago when I needed to investigate fraud at the company where I worked. He was discreet, efficient, and expensive, but he was worth every penny. Mr. Robert, he said, shaking my hand firmly. It's been years. I nodded. Too many. But I need your help again. I led him inside. Chelsea was in the kitchen making coffee. When she saw Alexander, she looked at me with curiosity. Chelsea, this is Mr. Alexander Paz, a private investigator. She nodded. We all sat at the table, and I began to tell him everything. I told him about Mark, about the wedding, about the attempted robbery, about the threats, about the insinuations that my mother had done something terrible 60 years ago. Alexander listened in silence, taking notes in a small notepad. When I finished, he closed the notepad. Have you already investigated Mark? He asked. I nodded. I have basic information, his birth certificate, his adoption, but I need more. I need to know who he really is, and I need to find his mother, Alice Baruti. Alexander wrote down the name. Do you have any photo of her? I shook my head. I only know that she disappeared 40 years ago, and that before she left, she told Mark I was his father. Alexander looked at me intently. And are you? I held his gaze. I don't know, but I'm going to find out. Alexander left with the promise of having information in 3 days. 3 days that felt like 3 years. Chelsea and I stayed in the condo, waiting. She didn't go out. She was afraid of running into Mark. I didn't go out much either, only to buy necessities, and always watchful, always looking over my shoulder, because I knew Mark was out there, planning, waiting. On the 3rd day, at 6 in the evening, Alexander knocked on the door. He was carrying a thick folder. He put it on the table. I found things, he said. His tone was serious, grave. Things you are not going to like. I sat down. Chelsea sat next to me. Tell me everything, I said. And Alexander began to speak. Mark Baruti, Alexander began, opening the folder. Born on March 12th, 1964. Mother, Alice Baruti. Father, unknown. He spent the first 12 years of his life at St. Jude's Orphanage, here in New York City. I nodded. I already knew that. But what you didn't know, Alexander continued, is that someone was paying for his stay at the orphanage. Someone was paying for the food, the clothes, the education. It wasn't the state. It was a private person. I leaned forward. Who? Alexander pulled out a document, an old yellowed bank receipt. Gloria Morbillo, he said, and the world stopped. Your mother, Robert. Your mother paid for Mark for 12 years. I couldn't breathe. Chelsea grabbed my hand, squeezed hard. That's not all, Alexander continued. In July of 1976, when Mark turned 12, your mother made arrangements for the Smith family to adopt him. A wealthy, influential family. She paid them a considerable sum. I stood up. I walked to the window, looking at the street without really seeing it. Why? I asked, more to myself than to Alexander. Why would my mother do that? Alexander closed the folder. There is only one reason why someone secretly pays for a child for 12 years and then arranges their adoption. Because that child has family blood. Because that child is a problem that needs to be handled discreetly. I turned around. Are you saying Mark is my son? Alexander looked at me. I'm saying your mother believed he was. Chelsea stood up. But Dad was never with that woman. He never knew about any pregnancy. Alexander nodded. I know, and that's why I investigated further. He pulled out another folder. This one was thinner. 2 years ago, Mark hired 3 different investigators. He paid them to investigate Robert Alcantara Morbillo. His life, his family, his properties, everything. He put photos on the table, photos of me, leaving my condo, going into the bank, at the deli. He was watching you for 2 years, before meeting Chelsea, before all this. I looked at the photos. I felt a chill. Why? I asked. Why was he investigating me if he didn't know me? Alexander took a deep breath. Because someone told him you were his father, and he wanted revenge. Who told him? I asked. Alexander shook his head. That's the million-dollar question. Alice Baruti disappeared 40 years ago. No one has seen her since. There are no records, no trace. It's as if she vanished into thin air. I sat down again. But if she disappeared, who told Mark I was his father? Alexander pulled out another document. I found this in the orphanage records. A letter, left for Mark to receive when he turned 18. He handed me a copy. I read it. To Mark. Your father is Robert Alcantara Morbillo. He lives in New York City. He knew about you, but he didn't want you. I'm sorry, son. Your mother, Alice. My hands were shaking holding the paper. This is a lie, I said. I never knew about any pregnancy. Alexander nodded. I know, but Mark believes it. And that's why he hates you. That's why he planned all this. I put the letter on the table. I need to find Alice. She's the only one who can tell me the truth. Alexander frowned. Robert, she's been missing for 40 years. The chances of finding her, I interrupted him. I don't care. Pay whoever you have to pay. Look wherever you have to look, but find her. Alexander looked at me for a long moment. Then he nodded. All right. But it's going to take time, and it's going to cost. I pulled out my checkbook. I don't care about the cost. Just find her. Alexander took the check. I'll call you when I have something. He stood up and left. And Chelsea and I stayed there, in silence, processing everything we had just heard. Dad, Chelsea said after a while, is it possible? Is it possible that Mark is your son and you never knew? I ran my hands over my face. I don't know, honey. I dated some girls when I was young. Nothing serious. My mother was very strict. She wouldn't let me have formal girlfriends. But if one of them got pregnant and didn't tell me, I didn't finish the sentence. Chelsea moved closer. She hugged me. It's not your fault. You didn't know. I hugged her tight. But if he's my son, I lost 60 years with him, and he hated me all that time for something I didn't do. Chelsea pulled back. She looked me in the eyes. Then let's find the truth, and let's fix this. I nodded, but inside I was afraid. Afraid of what we were going to find. Afraid that the truth would be worse than the lie. That night, I received a text message. Unknown number. I know you're investigating me. I know you're looking for Alice. You won't find her. But I will. And when I do, you're going to have to accept what you did. It was Mark. I didn't reply, but I saved the message. Because it confirmed something for me. Mark was also looking for Alice. And if he found her first, he could manipulate the truth. He could make her say whatever he wanted. I had to find her first. I had to hear her side of the story. I had to know what really happened 60 years ago. I called Alexander. I need you to speed up the search. Mark is looking for her too. Alexander sighed. I'll do what I can. And he hung up. 2 days later, Alexander called me. His voice sounded different, excited. I found her, he said. I jumped up. Where? In a small town, Boston. She's living under a fake name, Carol Jones. But it's her, I'm sure of it. I felt my heart pound hard. Is she alive? Yes, and lucid. She's 78 years old. She lives alone in a small house on the outskirts of town. I looked at Chelsea. Her eyes were wide open. I'm going there, I said. Send me the address. Alexander hesitated. Robert, are you sure? After 60 years, maybe she doesn't want to talk. I took a deep breath. She has to talk. It's the only way to know the truth. The only way to end this. Alexander sent me the address. I hung up. I looked at Chelsea. I'm going to Boston. She nodded. I'm coming with you. I shook my head. It's dangerous. Mark could... She interrupted me. I'm coming with you, Dad. I'm not leaving you alone. And in her eyes, I saw determination. The same determination I felt. We packed that night. The next day, before dawn, we left for Boston. Toward Alice. Toward the truth. We didn't make it to Boston. Halfway there, my phone rang. It was Mrs. Kelly. Her voice sounded scared. Robert, that man is here. He's at your door. He's banging, shouting your name. I slammed on the brakes. Mark? Yes, he looks bad. Very bad. Like he's, I don't know, desperate. I looked at Chelsea. She had heard everything. Dad, don't go back. It's a trap. I shook my head. I have to go back. If I leave it like this, it's going to be worse. I turned the car around. Chelsea protested the whole way back. But I didn't change my mind. We arrived at my building 2 hours later. Mark was there, sitting on the stairs, his head in his hands. When he saw me, he jumped up. His eyes were red, his hair was messy, his clothes were wrinkled. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. Robert, he said. His voice sounded broken. I need to talk to you. I stopped a few feet away. Chelsea stayed behind me. Talk, I said. Mark looked at Chelsea. Alone. I shook my head. Whatever you have to say, you say it in front of her. Mark clenched his jaw. Fine. He took a deep breath. I know you're investigating me. I know you found Alice. I neither confirmed nor denied it. I just waited. You can't talk to her, Mark continued. You can't... His voice broke. You can't destroy the only thing I have left. I stared at him. And what do you have left, Mark? A lie? A hatred based on something that maybe never happened? Mark shook his head. It's not a lie. She told me. My mother told me before she left. Then I need to hear it from her, I said. I need her to look me in the eye and tell me that I knew, that I abandoned her. Because if that's a lie, Mark, you've wasted years hating the wrong man. Mark took a step toward me. And if it's not a lie, what if she confirms that you knew? I held his gaze. Then I will accept the consequences. But I need to hear it from her. Mark laughed, a humorless laugh. You won't get to her. Because if you try to talk to her, if you try to convince her to change her story, I will destroy Chelsea. Those words chilled me. Chelsea stepped forward. What did you say? Mark looked at her, and in his eyes there was something dark, dangerous. I have photos, Chelsea. Photos of you. Compromising ones. Chelsea went pale. That's a lie. I never... Mark pulled out his phone. He showed the screen. I looked, and I felt the rage explode inside me. They were photos of Chelsea. Manipulated. Edited. Photos that made her look like she was in situations she had never been in. Photos that would destroy her reputation if they ever got out. You son of a bitch, I said, walking toward him. Mark backed away. Careful, Robert. If you touch me, I'll publish them. If you go to the police, I'll publish them. If you talk to Alice, I'll publish them. I stopped. For the first time in this whole war, I felt fear. Real fear. Not for myself. For Chelsea. Because Mark had a weapon I couldn't fight with evidence or lawyers. He had the power to destroy my daughter with a single click. What do you want? I asked. Mark took a deep breath. I want you to stop investigating. I want you to destroy the evidence you have against me. And I want you to give me half of your mother's inheritance. I shook my head. I won't do that. Mark smiled, a cold smile. Then Chelsea pays. And believe me, those photos are going to be everywhere. At her job, on her social media, with the family, everywhere. Chelsea started to cry. I looked at her. I saw the fear in her eyes, and I felt something I hadn't felt in years, helplessness. I need time, I said, to think. Mark shook his head. There's no time. You decide now, or I publish them now. I closed my eyes, thinking, looking for a way out. But there was none. Mark had me cornered. All right, I finally said. I'll destroy the evidence. I'll leave you alone. But you leave Chelsea out of this. Mark smiled. That depends on you. If you comply, she's safe. If not... He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. And the inheritance? I asked. Mark shrugged. We'll discuss that later. First, I want to see you destroy the evidence. I nodded. Give me an hour. Mark looked at his watch. You have 1 hour, not 1 minute more. And he left, walking slowly, knowing he had won. Chelsea collapsed into my arms. Dad, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I hugged her. It's not your fault. But inside, I was planning, because I wasn't going to destroy any evidence. I was going to find a way to destroy Mark. We went up to my condo. Chelsea was trembling. I sat her on the sofa. I made her tea. She didn't touch it. What are we going to do? She asked. I sat next to her. We're going to stick to the plan. We're going to Boston. We're going to talk to Alice, and we're going to find out the truth. Chelsea looked at me, scared. What about the photos? I took her hand. They're fake. If he publishes them, we sue him. We destroy him legally. Chelsea shook her head. Dad, even if they're fake, the damage will already be done. People will believe them. They'll talk. I interrupted her. I know. But I'm not going to let Mark win. Not like this. Chelsea looked at me for a long moment. Then she nodded. All right, let's go to Boston. That night, while we were preparing for the trip again, my phone rang. It was Mark. Time's up, he said. I looked at the clock. 2 hours had passed. I need more time, I said. Mark laughed. No, you've had enough. Send me a video destroying the evidence, now. I took a deep breath. Mark, listen to me. I know you're angry. I know you think I abandoned you. But I need you to understand something. I never knew you existed. I never knew Alice was pregnant. If I had known... Mark interrupted me. Liar. She told me the truth. She told me before she disappeared. She told me that you knew, that you left her alone, that you never cared about me. I closed my eyes. Then let me talk to her. Let me hear her side of the story. No, Mark said. You won't manipulate her. You won't convince her to change her story. I opened my eyes. Change her story. Mark, what are you saying? Are you saying your mother lied? Silence. A long, heavy silence. Mark, I said slowly, is your mother alive? More silence. Mark, answer me. Is your mother alive or dead? He took a deep breath. She told me before she disappeared. Before she left. That's what matters. I stood up. Before she disappeared? Or before she died? Mark didn't answer. Mark, if your mother is dead, then I'll never be able to hear her side of the story. And you know it. That's why you don't want me to look for her. Because you're afraid of what I'll find. Mark hung up. And I knew. I knew Mark was either lying or he was afraid of the truth. We're leaving now, I said to Chelsea. She nodded. We packed quickly. We left the building through the back exit. I didn't want Mark to see us. I drove all night. Chelsea slept most of the way. I couldn't sleep. I was too tense, too anxious. We arrived in Boston at dawn. The town was small, quiet, beautiful. We found Alice's house on the outskirts, a small white house with a well-kept garden. I parked in front of the house. I looked at Chelsea. Ready? She nodded. We got out of the car. We walked to the door. I rang the bell. We waited. I heard footsteps inside. The door opened. And there she was. Alice Baruti, 78 years old, white hair, tired eyes, but alive, very alive. She looked at me, and in her eyes I saw recognition. Robert, she whispered. I nodded. Yes, it's me. She put a hand to her mouth. She started to cry. I didn't think you would find me. After so long. I took a step forward. I need to talk to you, Alice. I need to know the truth. About Mark. About what happened 60 years ago. She nodded, slowly. I know. I knew you would come someday. I knew someday I would have to face what I did. She opened the door wider. Come in. We have a lot to talk about. We went inside, and I knew that in the next few minutes, my whole life was going to change. Because the truth, after 60 years, was finally going to come to light, and there was no turning back. The house smelled of fresh coffee and garden flowers. Alice led us into a small but cozy living room. Old furniture, but well cared for. Photos on the walls, photos of landscapes, of flowers, but none of people, none of family. We sat on the sofa. She sat across from us in a wooden chair. Her hands trembled as she clasped them in her lap. How did you find me? She asked. I looked at Chelsea, then at Alice. I hired the best investigator I know, Mr. Alexander Paz. He found you in 2 weeks. Alice nodded. I should have gone farther. But I'm old now, tired. I no longer had the strength to keep running. I leaned forward. What were you running from, Alice? She looked at me, and in her eyes I saw 60 years of pain. From the truth, she said. Alice got up. She went to the kitchen. She came back with a tray, 3 cups of coffee, homemade cookies. She sat down again. She took her cup with trembling hands. She took a sip. She took a deep breath. We met in 1963, she began. In college. I was studying literature. You were studying accounting. I nodded. I remembered, vaguely. We went out a few times. Nothing serious. Or so I thought. Alice smiled, sadly. For me, it was serious. I fell in love with you, Robert. Deeply. But you were distant, as if you were afraid to get too close. I looked down. My mother was very strict. She wouldn't let me have girlfriends. She said career first, then there would be time for that. Alice nodded. I know. That's why I never insisted. And then I got pregnant, Alice said. Her voice broke. It was in May of 1963 after a party. You were drunk. I was too. Things happened. And after that night, you disappeared. You stopped going to college for 2 weeks. When you came back, you acted like nothing had happened. I closed my eyes, trying to remember. But I couldn't. I didn't remember that night. I didn't remember Alice in that context. When I found out I was pregnant, Alice continued, I tried to tell you. I went to your house. I knocked on the door, and the one who opened it was your mother. I opened my eyes. My mother? Alice nodded. Mrs. Gloria. She looked me up and down. She asked me what I wanted. I told her I needed to talk to you. She asked me why, and I told her the truth. Alice wiped a tear. Your mother made me come in. She took me to the living room. She sat me down, and she said, My son is not going to ruin his life for a girl like you. I felt the rage rising. What else did she tell you? Alice took a deep breath. She offered me money, a lot of money for that time. She told me that if I left, if I disappeared and never came back, she would pay me everything necessary to raise the baby. But if I stayed, if I tried to talk to you, she would destroy my family. My father had a small hardware store. He was in debt. She knew that. She said she could make him lose everything. Chelsea covered her mouth with her hands. Oh my God. Alice nodded. I was 19 years old. I was scared, alone, and your mother was powerful. So I accepted. I took the money, and I left. Where did you go? I asked. Alice looked out the window. To a small town near Philadelphia. I rented a room. I had the baby alone. I named him Mark, after my grandfather. I felt something break inside me. And I never knew any of this? Alice looked at me. No. Your mother made sure of that. She lied to you. She told you I had dropped out of college, that I had left with my family to another town. And you never asked. You never looked for me. Those words hurt. Because she was right. I didn't look for her. Because I thought there was nothing serious between us. Because I was young. Because I was a coward. I'm sorry, I said. I should have. Alice shook her head. It's not your fault. You didn't know. I should have insisted. But I was afraid. I raised Mark alone for 12 years, Alice continued. I worked as a housekeeper, as a laundress, whatever was necessary. The money your mother gave me ran out quickly, and she never helped me again, until Mark turned 12. I leaned forward. What happened when he turned 12? Alice closed her eyes. I was sick. Tuberculosis. The doctors said I didn't have much time, and I didn't know what was going to happen to Mark. I was desperate. She opened her eyes. And then your mother appeared again, like a ghost from the past. She knocked on my door. She walked into my house, and she made me another offer. I felt a chill run down my spine. What offer? Alice took a deep breath. That I disappear from Mark's life. Forever. Your mother had arranged an adoption, Alice said. A wealthy family, the Smith family. They wanted a child, but couldn't have one. Your mother offered them Mark. She told them he was the son of a distant cousin who had died. She paid them a considerable sum to adopt him. But there was one condition. I waited. That I disappear, Alice continued. That I never come back. That I never contact Mark. That I let him believe I had died. Chelsea stood up. And you accepted? Alice looked at her. Yes, I accepted. Because I was dying. Because I wanted my son to have a chance. To have an education, food, a future. Everything I couldn't give him. I shook my head. But you took his mother away from him. You took the truth away from him. Alice started to cry. I know. And it's something I've lived with every day for 40 years. But before I left, Alice said through tears, before I disappeared, I told Mark something. Something I shouldn't have told him. I felt my stomach clench. What did you tell him? Alice looked at me with eyes full of guilt. I told him who his father was. I told him your name. I told him where you lived and I lied to him. I stood up. How did you lie to him? Alice covered her face with her hands. I told him that you knew about him, that I had looked for you, that you had rejected me, that you didn't want us, that you had abandoned us. I felt like I had been punched. Why? Why did you lie to him? Alice cried harder. Because I was angry, resentful, hurt. Because I had carried everything alone for 12 years. And I needed someone else to blame. So I blamed you. I walked to the window, my hands clenched into fists, breathing heavily, trying not to scream. Because of your lie, I said without turning around. My son hated me for 60 years. Because of your lie, he planned to destroy me. Because of your lie, I almost lost my daughter. Alice sobbed behind me. I know. And I'm sorry. I've lived with that guilt every day, every night, knowing that I destroyed his life with a lie. I turned around. And you never thought about telling him the truth? About looking for him? About fixing what you broke? Alice shook her head. I tried. 20 years ago. When I recovered from tuberculosis, I went to look for him. But he was already an adult. He already hated me. And when he saw me, he slammed the door in my face. He told me that as far as he was concerned, I was dead. And that you were too. Chelsea approached me. She took my arm. Dad, we need Mark to hear this. He needs to know the truth. I looked at Alice. Will you come with me to New York City? Will you tell Mark the truth? Alice looked up. Her face was wet with tears. Would he forgive me? I shook my head. I don't know, but he deserves to know the truth. He deserves to know that the man he hated all his life never abandoned him, that he never knew he existed. Alice was silent for a long moment. Then she nodded. I'll go. I'll tell him the truth. It's the least I can do after all the damage I caused. I nodded. Pack your things. We leave in an hour. Alice got up and went to her room. Chelsea hugged me. "It's going to be okay, Dad." I didn't answer, because I wasn't sure anything would ever be okay again. While we waited for Alice, my phone rang. It was Mark. "I know where you are," he said. His voice sounded cold. "I know you found my mother." I didn't say anything. It doesn't matter what she tells you. It doesn't matter what lies she invents. I know the truth, and you're going to pay for what you did. I took a deep breath. "Mark, your mother is coming with me to New York City, and she's going to tell you the truth, the whole truth. And then you're going to know that all this time, you've been hating the wrong man." Mark laughed, a bitter laugh. "I'm not going to believe her. She already lied to me once. Why would I believe her now?" I closed my eyes. "Because she's your mother, and because she's going to look you in the eyes and tell you that she lied to you, that I never knew about you, that I never abandoned you. And then you're going to have to decide if you want to keep living with hatred, or if you want to start living with the truth." Mark hung up, and I knew. I knew the final battle was about to begin. We arrived in New York City at nightfall. Alice was silent in the back seat. Chelsea was driving. I was looking out the window, thinking about everything that was about to happen. I called Michael Coronas, my old friend. I asked him to come to my condo. I called Jane Morbillo, the attorney. I called Mrs. Kelly and Mr. Paul. I needed witnesses. I needed people to see what was going to happen, because I knew Mark wasn't going to accept the truth easily. We arrived at my condo. Everyone was there, waiting. Michael hugged me. "Are you sure about this?" he asked. I nodded. "It's the only way." Jane looked at Alice. "Is that her?" I nodded again. "Alice Baruti, Mark's mother." Everyone fell silent. Then I called Mark. "Come to my place, now. Someone wants to talk to you." Mark arrived half an hour later. He walked in without knocking. When he saw everyone, he stopped. "What is this?" I stood up. "It's a witness to the truth, Mark. So you can't say later that we lied to you. So everyone hears the same thing." Mark looked around. Then his eyes landed on Alice. He froze. "Mom?" His voice came out as a whisper. Alice stood up, trembling. "Hello, son." Mark took a step back. No, you're dead. You left 40 years ago." Alice shook her head. "I didn't die, Mark. I disappeared. Because I was paid to do it. Because I thought it was best for you." Mark shook his head. "No, I don't believe you. He paid you to say this." He pointed at me. Alice walked toward him. "No one paid me, son. I came on my own. Because I need to tell you the truth. The truth I should have told you 40 years ago." Mark sat down, slowly, as if his legs could no longer hold him. "Talk," he said. Alice sat across from him, and she began to tell the story. Everything. From the beginning. The pregnancy. Gloria's visit. The money, the threat, the exile. The 12 years raising him alone. Gloria's second visit. The adoption offer, her disappearance, and the lie she told him before she left. That I knew about him, that I had abandoned them. Mark listened in silence, his fists clenched, his jaw tight. And when Alice finished, when she told him, "I lied to you, son. Robert never knew about you. I blamed him for my pain, for my anger, and that was unfair." Mark exploded. "Liar!" He jumped up. "You abandoned me, and now you come here to tell me it was all a lie." Alice cried. "Yes, son. It was all a lie, and I'm sorry. I'm more sorry than words can express." Mark walked toward me. "And you? You expect me to believe you? You expect me to accept that you knew nothing? I stood up. I looked him in the eyes. I never knew Alice was pregnant. My mother hid everything from me. She lied to me. She manipulated me just like she manipulated you. We are victims of the same deception, Mark. We both lost 60 years because of my mother's lies. Mark shook his head. But I saw something in his eyes. Doubt. For the first time, I saw doubt. Why should I believe you? I pulled out the documents Alexander had found. The receipts for my mother's payments to Alice. The adoption papers. Everything. Because here is the proof. My mother paid for your silence. She paid for your adoption. She paid to make sure the truth never came out. And I never knew any of this until 2 weeks ago. Mark took the documents. He read them. Once. Twice. His hands were trembling. Mark collapsed into the chair. He covered his face with his hands. 60 years, he whispered. 60 years hating the wrong man. I sat down next to him. It wasn't your fault. You were lied to. You were manipulated. Just like me. Mark looked at me, and in his eyes, there was no longer hate. There was pain. Deep pain. I lost 60 years with you. 60 years I'll never get back. I nodded. I lost them too. But we can start now if you want to. Mark shook his head. I don't know if I can. I don't know if, after everything I did, after trying to destroy you, how you could forgive me. I took a deep breath. I don't know if I can forgive you for what you did. But I understand why you did it. And that's a start. Mark cried. For the first time since I met him, Mark cried. And I put a hand on his shoulder. And we stayed like that. Father and son finally united. Not by love, not yet. But by the truth. Chelsea came closer. She sat on Mark's other side. We're siblings, Chelsea said after a moment. Her voice trembled. Mark looked at her. I'm sorry, Chelsea. I'm sorry I used you. I'm sorry I lied to you. I'm sorry. Chelsea interrupted him. I know, and it hurts. It hurts a lot, but you were a victim too. We both were. Both. Mark nodded. Our marriage? Chelsea shook her head. It's being annulled, legally, immediately. Jane is already preparing the papers. Jane nodded from her chair. It's the right thing to do, given that you are half-siblings. Mark looked down. There was never anything physical between us. Chelsea nodded. I know. But still, it can't continue like this. Mark accepted. I understand. They remained silent. Both of them. Processing, accepting, healing. Slowly, very slowly. Mark took a deep breath. And the photos? He said, looking at Chelsea. The photos I showed you? They were fake. I had someone I know make them. I was never going to publish them. I just wanted to scare you. I wanted Robert to stop investigating. Chelsea closed her eyes. You made me believe my life was ruined. Mark lowered his head. I know, and I'm sorry, I deleted them. They all no longer exist. He pulled out his phone. He showed it to her. Empty. You can check it if you want. Chelsea didn't take it. It doesn't matter. I don't trust you anymore. Mark nodded. I understand. And I don't expect you to. I just wanted you to know that that threat no longer exists. Michael approached me. Robert, what are you going to do with the inheritance? I looked at Mark, then at Chelsea. I'm going to divide it. Half for Chelsea, 1/4 for Mark. Mark looked up. You don't have to. I interrupted him. Yes, I do. You are my son, even though I met you late, even though we lost 60 years. You carry my blood, and you have a right to something." Mark shook his head. "After what I did, I don't deserve anything." I sat across from him. "It's not about deserving. It's about doing the right thing. It's about starting to repair what my mother destroyed." Mark looked at me for a long moment. Then he nodded. "Thank you." One word. Simple, but loaded with meaning. "And the other quarter," I continued, "is for Alice, so she can have a dignified old age, so she can have medical care, so she doesn't have to keep running." Alice stood up. "I can't accept it." I interrupted her. "Yes, you can, and you will, because you need it, and because it's the least I can do after everything you suffered because of my family." Alice cried, "Thank you, Robert. Thank you." I nodded. "But there is one condition." She looked at me. "You are going to stay in New York City. You are going to be close to Mark. And you are going to try to rebuild the relationship with your son, if he wants to." I looked at Mark. He was looking at Alice, with pain, with anger, but also with something else, with a need. "I don't know if I can forgive you," he said to Alice. "I don't know if I'll ever be able to call you Mom again. But I want to try." Alice covered her mouth, sobbing. "It's more than I deserve." Mark nodded. "Yes, it is. But it's also what I need." And in that moment, something began to heal. Slow, painful, but real. That night, after everyone left, I was alone with Chelsea. We sat on the sofa in silence, processing everything that had happened. "I have a brother," Chelsea said after a while. I nodded. "Yes, a brother you never knew you had." Chelsea smiled, sadly. "It's strange. I went from being married to him to being his sister." I took her hand. "I'm sorry, honey. I'm sorry you had to go through this." She shook her head. "It's not your fault, Dad. None of this was your fault." We fell silent again. "Do you think we can ever be a normal family?" she asked. I thought about it. "I don't know. But we can try, day by day, step by step." Chelsea leaned her head on my shoulder. "I love you, Dad." I hugged her. "I love you too, honey. More than words can express." 3 months passed. Mark and I saw each other once a week. It wasn't easy. There were moments of tension, of uncomfortable silence, of pain. But there were also moments of connection, of understanding, of something close to peace. Chelsea and Mark built a sibling relationship. Strange, complicated, but real. Alice moved into a small condo near mine. Mark visited her. Not every day, but he visited mine, and that was enough for now. One day Mark came to my condo. He sat across from me. "I want you to know something," he said. I waited. For 60 years, I hated you. I blamed you for everything bad in my life. And now I know I was wrong. And that hurts me more than anything else. I nodded. "I know." Mark took a deep breath. "I don't know if I'll ever be able to call you Dad. I don't know if I'll ever be able to love you like a son loves his father. But I want to try." I felt the tears well up. That's enough for me. If you're listening to my story up to this point, thank you. Thank you for accompanying me on this painful but necessary journey. I leave you with a question I ask myself every night. Would you forgive someone who hurt you because of a lie that wasn't theirs? Could you hug a son who hated you for 60 years for something you never did? It's not easy. None of this was easy. But I'm here, at 81 years old, with a son I just met, with a daughter I almost lost, with truths that took 60 years to come out. And although the pain doesn't disappear, although the scars remain, there's something I learned. The truth always sets you free, even when it hurts, even when it destroys. If my story touched your heart, leave me a comment. Tell me if you've also faced lies that changed your life. And if you're not subscribed to the channel, do it now. Every day I share true stories of people like you and me. People who have survived, people who have healed, people who keep moving forward despite the pain. Thank you for listening. Until the next story.